Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto was reincarnated as Donquixote Doflamingo, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
How long had he been searching? How many maps, investigations, questions? How long had he been looking for any shred of evidence that he was still in the same world as before? How long had he been wondering if they were still out there? No one had heard of Haki. No one had ever heard of devil fruits. There was no red line, no grand line, nor a world government. After over a decade, he had found the proof he had been looking for, a fishman, standing there before him. Doffy couldn't almost believe. He blinked, just to make sure he wasn't hallucinating or that this wasn't a genjutsu. No, this was real. Still, he couldn't think about this right now. Whoever this fishman was, he and his companion were searching for him, and they didn't seem friendly. He looked over to the person in front of him, now recognizing who it was, the Sharingan eyes giving his identity away. It was Sasuke's brother, Itachi Uchiha, the only other living Uchiha. He remembered hearing about the incident, his apartment too far away from the Uchiha compound to sense the massacre. Itachi Uchiha was a powerful and ruthless man, killing his entire family for almost no reason at all. The Uchiha clan were not weak, they were one of the strongest in the village. Even then, it only took a single night for Itachi to kill every one of them, except his brother, of course. He shook the thoughts from his head, addressing the powerful Uchiha. Hey, you know, the old man told me I shouldn't go with strangers. Just what do you want with me anyways? He had a grin on his face, showing confidence as he thought about his escape route. He didn't get long to contemplate before Itachi answered him. We're after the 9 tails, Naruto. Now, this will be much easier if you just come with us. Doffy chuckled, building up his chakra. Hey, sorry, but I've grown attached to that overgrown orange rug, you're gonna have to find your own. The fishman stepped forward at his words. Come on Itachi, let me just cut his legs off and we'll haul him back. It'll be a lot easier than. A yell interrupted him, coming from down the hallway. Using his haki, he could sense Sasuke, not noticing him due to his focus on the other two. Itachi. A crackling of lightning followed, Sasuke's Chidori most likely, and he was charging at his brother. He was moving quickly, already in front of Itachi and in the doorway, Doffy now able to see him. He watched as Sasuke's fist lashed out, his older brother batting the attack aside at his wrist. Itachi sent a kick out towards Sasuke, and Doffy moved. He ducked under the Chidori that was redirected toward him, grabbing Itachi's leg and pushing it to the side, deflecting it and stopping Sasuke from getting hit. He put his other hand on Sasuke's chest, pushing him down the hall to get him out of the way. Sasuke, get out of here now. He jumped back, barely avoiding the punch swiping just in front of his face. As soon as he landed, he turned his head to his right, the fishman suddenly appearing there and the bandaged weapon in the air, coming down. Fishmen were naturally much stronger than humans, nearly 10 times so. Blocking that attack was a feat of strength he was not interested in testing. He jumped forward this time, a haki-enhanced leg lashing out at Itachi while he narrowly avoided the weapon. As the weapon passed by, he felt it, his chakra being ripped away from him. A weapon designed to take away the opponent's chakra. Sounds useful, and very dangerous. I can't even get near that blade or things will get even worse. That attack alone probably took almost a fourth of my chakra. He felt Itachi grab his leg, pulling and throwing him toward the wall. He attached strings to the opposite wall, slowing his momentum so he wasn't harmed. Using the strings, he reoriented himself and landed on the wall on his feet, 2 palms facing his opponents. Dual overheat. They dodged it, the 2 beams of fire passing by them as it pierced through the building. He looked over at Sasuke, who was watching him, his eyes wide. He was shaking, frozen. Doffy gritted his teeth, he didn't have time for this. He couldn't fight these 2 and protect Sasuke at the same time. Sasuke, get going now. I can't hold them back forever. That did it. Sasuke nodded, a mix of shame, fear and anger on his face. Doffy ignored it, getting off of the wall and landing on the floor, eyeing his 2 opponents who were patiently waiting for him. They really were polite enemies. Ha ha ha. I like this kid, Itachi. He's pretty fun. Doffy grinned, raising his hands as strings began to form at his fingertips. He launched them at the fishman, who raised his sword at the attack. He watched, curious as his strings dissolved as they got near the weapon. That thing is incredibly powerful. To eat away at that much chakra so quickly, I can't let that hit me directly. I need to keep my attention on him or I won't last a second. His haki flared, Itachi appearing before him with a roundhouse kick heading his way. It was too quick, Doffy putting his arms up and enhancing his arms with haki to absorb the blow. He was sent flying down the hallway, through the window as the end of the hall. He sent his strings out, slowing himself down to land properly and made his way to Jiraiya, making sure that the other two were following him. The fishman was behind him now, his sword already falling. Using his strings, he maneuvered out of the way and into his guard. The sword impacted the roof they were on, caving it in instantly. Doffy kicked at his wrist, using his other foot to kick the weapon away for him. It worked, and he kicked off the air to quickly grab the weapon, securing the handle in his hand. He grinned, things beginning to turn around. The fishman just continued to chuckle, confusing him. His haki flared to life once again. What the? He dropped the weapon just in time, watching as what looked like barbs jut out of the handle, attempting to stab his hand. The bandages tore apart, revealing a strange blade composed of scales. Even stranger, it began to make noises, and it was moving, making its way to the fishman through the destroyed rooftop. His opponent picked it up, chuckling. Sorry kid, but Same Hada is rather picky about its wielder, and right now, Kisame Hoshigaki is the one it likes the most. Doffy eyed the sword, processing what the now named Kisame had said. A sentient sword. That would explain why my haki saw the attack coming. Looking closer, there's an almost unnoticeable aura coming from it. But, if it has an aura, then that means. He jumped away again, Itachi appearing in front of him and leaping into the air to meet him. He created platforms with his strings, changing direction as Itachi followed. He ducked under the kunai that Itachi threw at him from behind. He kept moving, trying to reach Jiraiya on the other side of town. Then, his haki began to confuse him. It told him to dodge Itachi's approach from below, but Itachi was behind him. He moved anyway, trusting his instincts. Sure enough, there was another Itachi, a clone. His haki almost groaned at the sight. This was strange. Normally when someone created a clone, his haki would tell him what the user was making the clone do. This was different. It was like Itachi and his clone were two different people, and it would tell him to dodge one of Itachi's attacks, but it wouldn't tell him which Itachi was attacking. What was this technique? It didn't matter, he just had to keep moving. He rushed at the new Itachi, what he assumed to be the clone. He ducked underneath the punch it sent, his palm to his side as he passed the clone. Overheat. The beam slashed through the clone, but it didn't just dispel. The clone exploded, sending Doffy flying. He reoriented himself and landed on the street below. There were citizens running around, screaming, and it was irritating the hell out of him. How had Jiraiya not heard any of this? He looked behind him, sidestepping the large-scaled blade coming down, putting his previous plan into action. If this thing was sentient, and his haki was able to sense it, then it would be safe to assume one thing. He blasted the annoying blade with his Conquer's haki, watching as the thing slumped and began to bend, no longer keeping straight. The blade passed by him, no longer taking his chakra from him due to being unconscious, and he couldn't keep the grin of his face at Kisame's look. He lashed out with a kick, surprised when the fishman caught it in his palm. He used his other leg, lashing out at his captor. Storm leg. The blade of condensed wind slashed at Kisame, who let go of his foot and sidestepped the attack just barely. Kisame sent a punch, too quick for Doffy to dodge completely. He pulled up his arms to block the attack, creating strings from his back to pull him backwards and help absorb the blow. As soon as he could, he took to the air again, racing to Jiraiya's position. He ducked, dodging a fireball and watching it go over his head. He turned around, seeing the multiple fireballs racing toward him. He used his strings to pull him out of the way of each one, his palm facing behind his back as he attacked Itachi behind him. Overheat. Doffy ran, the Itachi behind him bursting into flaming crows. He looked up, seeing Itachi come down with a heavy kick. He launched his strings, slicing through Itachi's leg and severing it. Doffy scowled, now turning around and ignoring the bleeding, illusionary copy of Itachi. He was standing there, as calm as ever as his Sharingan eyes analyzed him. You are quite strong, Naruto. The rumors seem to be true. It would be troublesome for the Akatsuki to let you grow more powerful, so they sent us here, to test you and capture you if need be. It seems that might be necessary. He watched as Itachi's eyes began to shift in morph, something he had never seen Sasuke or Kakashi do with their own Sharingan. Now that he thought about it, it seemed the red eyes had different stages to them. Sasuke's only had 2 of those strange markings in them, while Kakashi's had 3. Was this another stage of it? Tsukuyomi. Doffy looked around, eyeing this new world with curiosity. The sky was blood red, black clouds dotting the sky with a pale red moon hanging over him. He was tied to a cross, his arms spread out with Itachi standing before him, a sword in hand. So, where are we now, Itachi? Itachi looked at him, silent for a moment. This is the Tsukuyomi, a world where I control everything. Time and space, all of it bends to my will. If I wished it, you could spend a lifetime here, and only a second would pass in the real world. Naruto, I'm afraid that you have lost this fight. Itachi stabbed the katana forward, impaling him through the stomach. Doffy ignored the blade, flaring his chakra to break the genjutsu. You'll find that this genjutsu is impossible to break, Naruto. It's over. Doffy took a close look around, looking for anything that would allow him to escape, thinking about what he had learned about the technique. He found an opening, his haki telling what he needed to know. The world outside the illusion was going unbearably slowly, but his haki still saw it, Itachi slowly falling to his knees, no doubt the stress of casting this technique. He grinned. Hey hey hey. Impossible you say. No, don't try and fool me Itachi, it's beneath a man of your caliber. Let me share my thoughts with you. This genjutsu of yours isn't unbreakable because it's so strong, but because it's so fast. By the time the chakra in my body has moved to dispel this technique, it will already be over. Itachi didn't respond, simply staring at him as he continued. But, this technique of yours must be very stressful. I wonder what would happen, if I did this. His conqueror's haki roared, slamming down onto the Uchiha. He watched as the Itachi in front of him began to crack and crumble, shards of the blood-red sky began to fall. He looked up, watching the destruction of the world, and all he could do was laugh. Hey hey hey. The moon cracked, and the bloody world of the Tsukuyomi fell. He woke up, quickly balancing himself on his strings. He had a slight headache, but it seemed Itachi was worse off, his eyes were bleeding, and he had a knee to the ground. He thought about attacking but decided against it. That technique was powerful, his quick thinking being the only thing that got him out of that illusion, and who knew what else Itachi had in his arsenal. Doffy had already showed his hand, he didn't have much left. The string under his feet went slack. He looked over and saw Kisame cutting it with Samehada who was now awake. Kisame was rushing toward him at incredible speeds, a punch flying forward. Doffy put up his arms, kicking off the air to try and dodge the attack but he was too slow. The force behind the punch was immense, crashing through his guard and into his chest. He felt his ribs creak and crack at the force, breaking through his haki. He was sent flying, trying to attach his strings to something but it didn't work, the force of his momentum was too great. He crashed through a roof, coughing up blood as he did so. He was inside a building now and he immediately put his hand to his chest, his strings getting to work. They pulled his ribs together again, his haki hardening them to ensure they stayed in place. His organs weren't ruptured too badly, a good sign. He string-stitched the damage together, his lungs making him cough to clear the blood in them. Hey, kid, what's going on, what are you doing here? He looked over, ignoring the loud music as Jiraiya sat there, surrounded by women and empty bottles of sake. He scowled at the old man, slowly getting up. What happened to, gathering information, you old fool. Get up and help me drive these guys off. Jiraiya turned serious, now ignoring the women around him and standing up, telling them to leave. The 2 Rouges appeared a second later. Itachi already looked like he recovered, his face calm as he eyed the 2 of them. Jiraiya greeted them. Well, if it isn't Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki, 2 members of the Akatsuki. This is good, since you're both already here, I can cut down on the Akatsuki's ranks already. Doffy looked at Jiraiya, adamant about asking him question later. He already knew about this Akatsuki with just a glance. Itachi said they were after the fox, so why didn't Jiraiya tell him? Itachi spoke next and surprised him. Kisame, we're leaving. Kisame seemed surprised as well, looking over at Itachi. He made to argue but Itachi predicted it, interrupting him. We do not want to get into a fight with Jiraiya of the Sannin. It would be better if we simply left now. Jiraiya simply chuckled, stepping forward and getting in front of Doflamingo. His voice was lower than usual, dangerous. And what makes you think that I'll simply let you leave so easily? The Toad Sage placed a hand on the floor. Ninja art, Toad mouth trap. Immediately, the walls and floor began to disappear, replaced with pink flesh. It grew around the building they were in, trapping them inside. The two ninja began to run, going through a doorway behind them and into a nearby hall. Jiraiya made to follow them. Naruto, don't move and you'll be fine. I'll be right back. Doflamingo nodded, eyeing the strange technique around him. The techniques that he had seen had always been rather interesting, but this was something completely different. It reminded him of awakening, an ability one could unlock with the devil fruit, but Jiraiya did this without one. It was strange, but 40 years as a ninja had obviously taught the sage strange but effective technique. He heard an explosion, his haki sensing Itachi and Kisame escaping. The flesh in the building began to recede, giving him the ability to move again as Jiraiya turned around the corner. They got away. Jiraiya nodded, a serious expression still on his face. Doflamingo sighed, running a hand through his hair. Whatever then, as long as they're gone for now. Come on, we have to go get Sasuke and get back to the hotel. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Sasuke, Itachi's brother. What is he doing here? Doflamingo just shrugged, jumping out the hole in the ceiling with Jiraiya following him. He tracked Sasuke's position, who was also heading over toward him, probably trying to track the battle. He felt someone else as well, Virgo's sensei, Guy. No idea. Let's find out, shall we? They soon met up, Guy explaining the situation to them. Apparently the two had entered the Leaf Village, looking for him. Asuma was hurt and Kakashi was apparently unconscious, most likely in a coma. Jiraiya took command immediately, ordering Guy to take Sasuke back to the Leaf as they continued to search for Tsunade. Sasuke looked at Doflamingo, his eyes full of envy. Doflamingo could recognize that, he had seen it many times in his life. He returned a look, silently telling his teammate they would talk later. The two left, leaving Jiraiya and himself alone. They looked at the damage to the hotel, Jiraiya sighing as he took out his checkbook. He began to scribble, and Doflamingo spoke up. So, have you managed to gather anything today? Or, were you just screwing around again? Jiraiya didn't look up as he replied. No, I got something all right. I know where she is, Tanzaku Town. Doflamingo nodded at him, glad that he wasn't completely wasting their time. How far away? Jiraiya ripped the check out, throwing it inside upwards and into their room. A few days at least. At your pace or mine. Jiraiya chuckled at his words, walking down the street as Doflamingo followed. Yours, kid. Now let's get going before an angry mob forms and kicks out of town themselves. Doflamingo nodded as they went, quickly taking to the rooftops and running out of town. He looked forward at the old man, curious. Those two were powerful, the strongest people he had gotten in a fight with. His conqueror's haki had saved his life twice in that fight, and next time those two were going to see it coming. So, even knowing that he had strange techniques and abilities, they still didn't hesitate to continue their assault. But, the moment Jiraiya appeared, Itachi didn't hesitate to retreat. They weren't scared of Naruto Uzumaki, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, they feared Jiraiya, the Toad Fool. He looked at the old man, thinking about that moment. Just how strong was Jiraiya? They kept moving. It took about 3 days to get there. The town was quite large, a small wall encircling it with a very large castle laying within. She was somewhere in this town, the key to Temari's survival and the next Hokage, Tsunade Senju. They moved quickly, Doflamingo sending his haki out to find the woman. They had a lot of ground to cover, but they found her eventually. She was in a bar, with another black-haired woman, who was carrying a small pig. She looked to be drinking out of a large bottle of sake. Doflamingo was beginning to see a pattern here. Tsunade looked up, noticing Jiraiya and shock appearing on her face. Jiraiya. The old man followed suit, pretending to be just as surprised to see her. They took a seat across from him, Jiraiya beginning the conversation. Man, it really has been a long time, hasn't it, Tsunade? You look as young as ever. Ha ha ha. Tsunade grunted at him, taking another swig of her alcohol. The black-haired woman spoke up, trying to chastise the blonde woman. Lady Tsunade, you shouldn't drink so much, you've already had. Quiet Shizune. Yes ma'am. Shizune immediately folded, causing Dofi to frown. It was a strange relationship the two shared. If he had to guess, Shizune seemed to be a servant of Tsunade's, a slave perhaps. He hadn't seen any evidence of slavery in these lands though, so it was quite odd. He ignored it, looking at Jiraiya to prompt him to hurry on with this. Tsunade, I'm sure you're aware that we aren't here for a social visit. She nodded, resting her head on folded hands. Yes, now out with it Jiraiya. Why are you here? The two legendary ninja looked at each other for a moment, silent as the air began to tense. The third Hokage is dead. It has been decided that you are to be the next Hokage. Tsunade was silent as he took in his words, taking another sip of sake before slamming the bottle on the table. I refuse. The Hokage is a job for suicidal fools. I have no interest in it. He felt Jiraiya flinch slightly at her words, but he continued the conversation. The village needs you Tsunade. Anger was apparent on her face now. And sir, what? That village has taken enough from me Jiraiya. Don't think you can just stroll in here and sweep me away like this. I told you that I wanted nothing to do with the village years ago. My mind hasn't been changed since then. Dofi chose to speak up, tired of hearing the two argue. Fine, refuse the job. We still need your skills to heal the injured. More importantly, I need you to save someone for me. Tsunade looked over at him, before looking at Jiraiya, ignoring his words. Who's the brat, Jiraiya? Another apprentice of yours. Jiraiya nodded, silent as he began to grow nervous. TCH, of course he is. Another arrogant fool who probably wants to be Hokage, just like your last one. And what happened to him? Dead at an early age just like my grandfather. This one probably isn't any better, another fool chasing after the title of Hokage. Jiraiya was almost visibly sweating, looking between Dofi and Tsunade. He could feel his anger build at the blonde's words but didn't rise to them. He needed her help to save Temari, and he could take some words if it meant saving her life. Still, he was beginning to not like this Sannin, not that he liked any of the trio anyways. Hey. To call me arrogant with arrogant words of your own. Such a pretentious woman, aren't you? It doesn't matter what I want or who I am, you just need to come back with us and heal a friend of mine. Tsunade stood up, snarling as she did so. His words had obviously angered her and he couldn't help but grin at the sight. You talk big, you know that kid. Fine, meet me outside. Shizune got out of her way, Dofi following the blonde woman. They stepped out into the night air, the streets practically empty. They stood a few meters across from each other. Jiraiya stood at the side of the road, Shizune next to him. She was visibly nervous at the confrontation while Jiraiya was hiding it under a cool facade. All right kid, listen up. We're gonna have a wager, a quick spar so you know your place from now on. I'm only going to use a single finger, she raised the pointer finger on her right hand, and if you can force me to use more than this finger or land a blow in the next 2 minutes, you win. I'll come back with you and heal your friend. Deal. Dofi grinned, nodding as he got ready. Tsunade began the spar. Start, brat. Dofi ran slowly at first, taking advantage of the fact that the older woman was underestimating him. He had questioned Jiraiya about her, learning more about her techniques and abilities. She possessed an extreme amount of physical strength, some considering the strongest person in the world in that category. A single finger was all she needed to split the earth itself, according to Jiraiya. Still, even with all that strength she was a medical ninja before she was a fighter. He was in front of her now, and he ducked, his haki predicting the finger flick that was sent to his forehead. He sped up, moving at his full speed now, and lashed out with a powerful kick. It sped through the air, Tsunade jumping over it and dodging it, but that was fine, his strings were already moving. They came together behind her, forming a string clone that made a hammer fist with his hands, slamming down at the Sannin's back. She lashed out with a kick, sending the clone backward as it collapsed into a heap of string. She landed on the ground, looking at him and seething. She sent a powerful punch toward his face. He grinned, watching as it stopped just before reaching him. Why aren't you moving, kid? He laughed at her. Hey. The name's Naruto, and we'll leave tomorrow morning. He watched in satisfaction as the realization struck her. She had used a kick and a punch in that fight, violating her own rules and making him the winner of their little wager. He walked over to Jiraiya. Hold it, brat. He turned, eyeing the older woman. I didn't say when I would go back to the leaf. The veins in his forehead began to ripple, anger flooding through him as he frowned at her words. He walked forward, ready to continue when Jiraiya spoke up. Tsunade, what's going on? What happened? The older woman was silent for a moment, before sighing. Orochimaru. He visited me earlier today. He told me that he killed Sensei, and he wants me to heal whatever he did to him. When is he coming back? Doffy asked. She hesitated for a moment. A week from now. He grinned, heading out of town to perfect his new technique. Then we wait a week. Jiraiya, I'm heading out for a bit, buy us a room. He had some business to settle with that worm. Jiraiya sighed, taking another drink of his sake at the bar. Naruto had been gone almost all week, constantly training whatever new technique he had developed. The boy really was his father's son. He couldn't believe what he was seeing when the boy had mastered using fire chakra so quickly. The element was the exact opposite of his natural affinity, yet he learned it anyways, in a couple weeks no less. Of course, he didn't stop there. Naruto made a new technique in the following weeks, a beam of flame that came from his palm. When he first saw it, he couldn't believe that a genin had come up with it. It was a terrifying jutsu, using nothing but shape manipulation, chakra control and elemental chakra. It was seal-less, and traveled quickly, the only warning being his palm facing toward you before death raced at you. It was the technique that Minato was trying to turn the Rasengan into, and Naruto had already accomplished it. It wasn't that much of a surprise to see him master the Rasengan so quickly after that. There was no doubt in his mind that Naruto would surpass his father, he already had in some ways. The boy was strong, physically and mentally. Being able to stare down two S-rank ninja like that and fight his way through them is not something that any ordinary genin could do, it wasn't something some jonin could do. There was still so much to teach the boy and he was already so powerful, who knew where he would be when he learned to use the Nine Tails chakra. His thoughts were interrupted as someone joined him, sitting next to him. He looked over, seeing Tsunade order a drink. They both sat there for a bit, silent as they drank. Tsunade broke the silence. Is he the one? Minato's kid. Jiraiya swallowed the alcohol down, nodding. That's him all right. Pretty good, isn't he? She nodded at his words, looking down at the table. Yeah, didn't expect him to be so strong, you trained him well. He looked over, surprised to hear the compliment. There was something wrong, and he was going to find out what. Tsunade, what's going on? What did Orochimaru say? This isn't like you. She sat there for a moment, hesitating to speak. He offered to bring them back, Jiraiya. Dan, Nawaki, even grandfather. He said he could bring them all back if I wanted to. He stared at her, his eyes hardening at her words. The reanimation technique, a cursed and disgusting technique that brought the dead back to fight the living. Of course Orochimaru would learn it, that was probably how he beat Sensei in the first place. And you should know that he is lying to you. The gone, Tsunade. You need to accept that. Her head snapped over to him, anger on her face. And what would you know if it? You never had any family or a lover in the first place. Her eyes widened as she realized what she said, her expression softening. She looked back down at the small cup of sake in front of her. Her voice was quiet when she spoke next. Sorry. Jiraiya ignored her words, seeing them for what they were, a hurt person lashing out. He sighed as he looked up at the ceiling. Man, times sure have changed, haven't they, Tsunade? Sitting here, drunk and reminiscing about the past. If I didn't know any better, I'd say we were getting old. Ha ha ha. He heard her chuckle at her words, and he smiled. Leaning back against the bar, he continued. You know, Tsunade, you're not the only one afraid to face the future. You wouldn't believe the time I had meeting back up with Naruto. Probably the most grating experience of my life, and that's saying something. She looked over at him, curious. I was nervous the entire time, picturing Minato and Kushina when I thought about him, let alone looked at him. Still, I swallowed my fears, and met with the godson I abandoned over 12 years ago, introducing myself. She leaned forward slightly. So, what happened? He grinned at her. He kicked me through a bathhouse. Ha ha ha. A deadpan expression took over her face. That's not very reassuring, Jiraiya. His laugh settled down before he continued. Well, the point is that I was happy that I did it. I put away the past and looked toward the future, Naruto. The kid can do some amazing things, Tsunade. This better not be more of your child of prophecy crap, Jiraiya. He shook his head, a small frown on his face. No, I'm done with all that. I've searched all my life for them and I'm tired of searching. Now, I just believe in Minato's son, Naruto. If he happens to be that child, then all the better. But I have faith in him, Tsunade, and I want you to have some faith in him too. Technically, he is family to you, if only long-distant cousins. She stared at him, taking in his words as she smiled. You know, I came here to drug you tonight. Take your chakra away so I could deal with Orochimaru myself. I'm tired of everyone around me dying, Jiraiya. I wanted to handle this myself, to kill Orochimaru and not put anyone else I cared about in danger. But, if you believe in this kid that much, then I will too. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what do you mean believe in him, that much? She chuckled at him. You mean you didn't notice? During your little speech, you didn't look at my chest even once. He stared at her for a moment, before laughing, pouring both of them another drink. They sat there for a long time, enjoying each other's company for the first time in over a decade. Doffy woke up, eager to start this marvelous day. He had completed his technique, just in time too, since he was beginning to cause some serious damage outside the village. He got up, throwing a pillow at the old man laying in the other bed. Gah! What the? Doffy ignored him, changing into a fresh set of clothes. Hurry and wake up, old man. Today's an important day, we have a snake to skin. He heard the old man grumbling about something or other. They both got dressed, stepping outside and out of their hotel. Tsunade and Shizune were waiting for them. He stretched out his haki, sensing the snake Sannin waiting near the wall behind the castle. He felt someone else as well, Kabuto, and he was heading this way. He turned to Jiraiya. Kabuto is here, probably a spy of Orochimaru's. We should hide and meet up with them later. Jiraiya nodded and looked toward Tsunade. He's right. We'll meet you over there. Just pretend to heal his arms and try and kill him if you can. If something goes wrong, we'll step in to help you. She nodded as they moved out, heading toward the castle. They arrived on the rooftop, seeing Orochimaru standing at the streets below. Tsunade and Shizune came a moment later, Kabuto guiding them. He eyed the white-haired Genin. He knew there was something off about him during the Chunin exams. Seeing him here wasn't too much of a surprise, but it made him wonder how strong he was. There was no one else with the two of them, meaning that Orochimaru trusted Kabuto greatly. It was troubling. He watched the events unfold. Tsunade went to heal his arms, her hands covered in chakra. Kabuto interrupted them, jumping between them and stopping the sneak attack. It didn't work, but Doffy wasn't exactly disappointed in that. It just meant they could make the worm squirm a bit before it died. Tsunade jumped into the air, a heel coming down and crashing into the ground. Kabuto and Orochimaru jumped onto the wall as the ground beneath them shattered, a shockwave forming and cracking the walls around her. Jiraiya wasn't lying when he said she was strong. An attack like that would snap almost anyone in half. She punched the wall the two ninja were standing on next, making it explode into large chunks of concrete. Jiraiya and Naruto jumped down, joining Tsunade and Shizune as they stood before Orochimaru and Kabuto. Now that he was closer, he got a better look at the snake. Whatever the old man had done, it was obviously torturous. His arms were limp, covered in bandages with blood soaking through at various points. His skin seemed even paler, gray really, and covered in sweat. He seemed tired, almost struggling to even stay awake. He couldn't help but be proud at what Hiruzen had reduced the snake Sannin to. And they were going to finish the job right now. Jiraiya spoke, addressing their little team. Naruto, I want you and Shizune to take care of Kabuto. Tsunade and I will take care of Orochimaru. He nodded, not happy to be fighting Kabuto, but he figured if he beat him quickly then the four of them could kill the snake. Shizune stood next to him, a senbon needle in hand. Kabuto chuckled. Well, it seems we're in quite some trouble here, aren't we, Lord Orochimaru? Yes indeed, Kabuto. It will be quite difficult for me to fight my former teammates in my current state. The bandages on one of his arms began to unravel, revealing a seal. Orochimaru continued. Fortunately for us, I thought ahead. Kabuto bit his thumb, blood appearing as he smeared it on Orochimaru's arm. Kabuto placed a hand on the ground. The other Sannin followed suit, placing their hands on the ground and using their technique. Summoning Jutsu. Summoning Jutsu. Summoning Jutsu. Large clouds of smoke appeared, eventually clearing to reveal what they had summoned. A large toad, a sheathed blade at his waist while smoking a large pipe. Jiraiya stood atop its head, doing one of his stupid poses. There was a large slug as well, Tsunade standing on top of it with her arms crossed. Doffy looked over to Orochimaru. There was no cloud of smoke, no summoning animal. No, there was something else. Reanimation. A coffin stood straight up, the front falling forward to reveal the one inside. They walked out, looking around. He had long, straight jet black hair, with red-plated armor. He looked young and had a leaf headband around his forehead. Kabuto jumped forward, placing a kunai with a tag attached to it in the figure's forehead. He had read enough history books to recognize their new enemy. Hashirama Senju stood there, the first Hokage in all his glory. Doffy gritted his teeth, the appearance of the man complicating things. He didn't know how this reanimation technique worked, but he doubted it would be easy to stop. Now he had to be quick, he needed to defeat Kabuto and help the Sannin. Kabuto jumped away from Orochimaru, approaching him and Shizune. More clouds of smoke appeared as the summons were dismissed, not expecting them to summon the first. Kabuto ran further, Doffy and Shizune following him as they got away from the battle between legends. Shizune struck first, rushing at Kabuto and stabbing forward with her senbon. Kabuto ducked underneath it, his hands glowing with chakra as he struck at her ankles. Doffy gathered his strings, grabbing Shizune and pulling her back to avoid the strike. Shizune took advantage of his help, a purple mist appearing as she spat a cloud of poison at the sound ninja. Kabuto jumped back, trying to get away. Doffy sent his strings again, trying to grab Kabuto and pull him into the poison cloud. Chakra appeared around Kabuto's hands again, slicing at his strings and stopping them. The three stilled for a moment, deciding their next move. Doffy moved first, kicking off the ground and rushing at Kabuto. He reached him, watching as Kabuto struck forward with his chakra-covered hands. Doffy used his strings, pulling himself up and around the ninja and kicking his back, sending him toward Shizune. She responded in kind, sending more senbon as he flew toward her. Kabuto pulled out a kunai, blocking the senbon and touching down on the ground. He approached her, a hand reaching down as he touched her calf. He saw Shizune flinch, jumping back on one leg and pulling back her sleeve, revealing some kind of device on her wrist. Her teeth pulled a wire, a hail of senbon speeding out toward Kabuto. He backflipped over the senbon, staying still when he landed. He chuckled as he stood between Naruto and Shizune. She was on her knee, green chakra hovering over her calf. Impressive, aren't they? The things chakra scalpels can do in battle are quite deadly. I don't even have to pierce your skin to cut through all the muscle underneath. Doffy narrowed his eyes. He moved quickly, slashing his hand at Kabuto and sending his strings at him. Kabuto dodged, moving to the side as Doffy went past him, standing between him and Shizune. He looked behind him, watching as she continued to heal her leg. Those chakra scalpels seemed pretty dangerous. According to Kabuto, they went beneath the skin to attack, and he wasn't sure that his haki would completely block something like that. He turned back toward his opponent. For now, he had to give Shizune some space. He slashed his hands at him once again while moving forward, driving the silver-haired ninja backward. When they made enough distance, he stopped, getting in close to try and land a hit. Kabuto's hand lashed out and Doffy ducked underneath it, sending a punch in return. Kabuto moved to the side, his hand reaching out to touch his bicep. Doffy jumped away, his palm facing Kabuto as he did so. Overheat. The stream of molten string mist, Kabuto jumping to the side and rushing forward. His speed had increased, no doubt lowering it through the beginning of the fight to take him by surprise. He ducked under the scalpel aimed at his head, a punch landing into Kabuto's gut, covered in haki. He felt the organs beneath his fist bend and burst, sending the silver-haired genin flying into a boulder. Just before he was sent flying, Kabuto touched his bicep, partially going through his haki and hurting the muscle underneath. Doffy looked at his arm. It wasn't a bad wound, but it would affect him if he did nothing about it. He gathered his strings, using them to reconnect the muscle fibers in his arm and bring his strength back up to full. He looked over at Kabuto. The front of his shirt had a small hole in it, displaying the wound he had caused with his punch. The wound was steaming. For years, I've done research to modify and improve my body. Through that, I've discovered a way to increase the speed that my body heals, making it akin to that of a Jinchuriki. Doffy grinned at him, slight confusion playing in his mind. Jinchuriki healed faster. Damn. And he always thought he was just that awesome. Oh well, this just meant that he would have to hit Kabuto harder, and he had just the thing. Hey, do you think some faster healing is gonna save you from me, Kabuto? It doesn't matter how fast you heal if die too quickly in the first place. He formed a Rasengan in his hand, grinning at his first victim. Kabuto looked at it, seeming to recognize the technique. So, you learned the fourth jutsu, have you? Well, I'm afraid that won't be enough to stop me. Doffy chuckled at him, the Rasengan falling toward the ground before stopping, being suspended by a string. Oh. Trust me, Kabuto, I'm counting on it. The Rasengan began to spin around his arm, gaining speed as he reared it back. Then, he pushed his arm forward, the Rasengan flying toward Kabuto as the string extended. Demon strings. Kabuto saw the Rasengan coming toward him, quickly jumping away to avoid it. It was too late, he was already in range. Spiraling threads. The Rasengan exploded, releasing the hundreds of strings that were inside of it. They expanded quickly, forming an ever-growing sphere of razor-sharp wire. Kabuto couldn't fully escape the technique, his leg in range of the explosion. It was severed clean off as he screamed. He couldn't help but chuckle, glad to see the technique worked perfectly. He left Kabuto alive on purpose, he needed information. Jiraiya ducked under the sword stickun of Orochimaru's mouth, a harsh kick landing in the snake's stomach to push him away. He looked over, his hair extending as it grabbed Tsunade and pulled her away from a tree growing out of the ground, threatening to spear her through her stomach. She landed beside him, panting slightly. Thanks. He nodded, looking at the situation. He never thought Orochimaru would summon the first Hokage to fight them, a clear mistake. The only thing he could imagine would stop him would be to force Orochimaru to end the technique or seal the first away somewhere. He thought about one of his options, eyeing Orochimaru's arms. Wait, Orochimaru didn't perform the technique, Kabuto did. We need Kabuto to stop this. He snarled as his hair extended once again. Needle Jizzo. Thick senbon of hair launched from his mane, making Orochimaru run and dodge them. Jiraiya turned toward Tsunade. Tsunade, switch with me. I'll seal the first away, while you hold off Orochimaru. She hesitated for a moment, looking at her grandfather, before jumping away. He stood before the first Hokage, grateful that Kabuto did not seem very skilled with the technique. The first had not spoke the entire time, his entire personality being suppressed, and a majority of his strength with it. He didn't doubt that he could defeat the first in this state, but he didn't know if Orochimaru had anything else up his sleeve. The first placed his palms together, casting a technique. His monotone voice rang through the field. Wood-style, deep forest emergence. Trees began to sprout around Jiraiya, quickly growing into sharpened tree trunks, trying to pierce his flesh. He jumped up, hand signs being made as he looked down. Fire-style, flame bullet. He spat a series of fireballs, infused with oil to increase their effectiveness. The flames stuck to the trees, swiftly burning them down and stopping the technique. He landed back on the ground, ducking underneath the first's kick and grabbing his leg. He spun, throwing the previous Hokage into the air. He made more signs, seeing his chance. Earth-style, swamp of the underworld. A swamp of sticky mud appeared underneath the Hokage, who landed into it. Jiraiya moved toward him quickly, spitting out another fireball to harden the mud, making it as hard as stone. He pulled a scroll from inside his vest, unraveling it quickly. The Hokage had been captured perfectly, his hands stuck to his sides and only his head visible. He laid the scroll onto the ground in front of him, displaying the intricate seal. He placed a palm on the Hokage's forehead and the other onto the seal. Double tetragram seal. The first's body began to turn into chakra, rushing into the scroll. Jiraiya immediately closed the scroll, putting it in his vest. That had been a scare, if the first hadn't been robbed of willpower that never would have worked. Even still, a small scroll like that wouldn't hold him forever, they still had to stop the technique. He sighed, getting up and turning around, looking for Tsunade. He was met with a large cloud of dust, something heavily impacting the ground. He jumped over, seeing Tsunade stand a bit away from the cloud. Is it done? She asked, her face filled with utter seriousness. Jiraiya nodded to her, keeping an eye out for Orochimaru. Yeah, Kabuto wasn't very good at the technique. It was easy once I had an opening. She nodded, both watching as Orochimaru emerged from the cloud of dust. He looked pretty banged up, the skin on his face peeling backward to reveal the body he had possessed underneath. He really had completed that jutsu, his technique of immortality. The snake glared at them. Fine, Tsunade. There are other ways to heal my arms. Next time we meet, I'll kill all you. I'll turn you into my latest lab rats and watch as you beg for death. Orochimaru began to sink into the ground, prompting Jiraiya and Tsunade to rush after him. Orochimaru opened his mouth, snakes beginning to crawl out. Formation of 10,000 snakes. A warlord snakes soon formed, blades extending from each of their mouths. Jiraiya quickly used his summoning jutsu, Gamma now under his feet. Gamma, I need some oil. Gamma didn't hesitate, a stream of flammable oil jetting from his mouth. Jiraiya breathed fire, igniting the oil and creating a large firestorm. Fire style, Toad Flame Bomb. The snakes burned to a crisp, their ashes and remains staying in the air for a moment. Tsunade rushed forward, looking for Orochimaru. She found nothing, he was gone. Doflamingo approached the newly crippled shinobi. He sent his strings forward, grabbing the ninja's wrists and holding them down. He planted his foot on Kabuto's chest, leaning down toward him. So, Kabuto, how's that regeneration coming, huh? Hey hey hey. Kabuto coughed, the foot on his chest obstructing his breathing. Doflamingo stopped laughing, turning serious. Now, tell me how to undo the reanimation. He lessened the pressure his foot was exerting, giving Kabuto a chance to speak. Why would I do that? You'll just kill them. He increased the pressure, Kabuto's ribs slowly beginning to snap. Depending on what you say, your death can be slow and painful, or quick and painless. Now start talking. He eased the pressure again, watching as Kabuto's head turned to the side to cough up blood. All right. Technically, I was the one to cast the jutsu, so I need to cast the hand seals to release the technique. Doflamingo released the strings, his haki concentrating for any sudden moves. Do it. Kabuto nodded, making several hand seals. Release. Doflamingo raised an eyebrow, surprised at how simplistic it was. His strings returned, tying up Kabuto's hands. His haki told him that his intention was to release the jutsu, he didn't need him anymore. He raised a hand, strings forming at his fingertips. Good job, Kabuto. I'll make it quick. His hand came down, ready to end Kabuto's life. Wait. I know something you'll want to hear. He stopped, looking down at the ninja. Kabuto was beginning to grow pale, whether that was his brush with death or the blood loss he didn't know. He waited for Kabuto to continue. My pouch. Check the pouch on my hip. Doflamingo did so, shuffling through the kunai and other various tools to find a small booklet. He opened it, reading its contents as he flipped through the pages. He looked back at Kabuto, anger on his face. Where did you get this? Kabuto gulped, fear evident in his voice. We got it from a deal with one of Konoha's elders. He leaned closer, a large grin on his face as the veins in his forehead rippled. Give me a name, Kabuto. The ninja nodded. Danzo Shimura. Doflamingo stood back up, eyeing the book he had found. It was filled with ninja placements, patrol routes and ninja profiles. Information that would be very important if one wished to start an invasion in the Leaf Village. Whoever this Danzo was, he was the one that ended up getting the old man killed. He looked at Kabuto, grinning. Good news, Kabuto. It looks like you're gonna live just a little bit longer. Hey hey hey. His foot slammed down, hitting the ninja in the face and knocking him out. He dragged the unconscious shinobi over to Shizune. She was standing now, though still had a slight limp. You all right? She nodded, a small smile on her face. Yes, though sorry I wasn't much help. He shook his head, looking over as Tsunade and Jiraiya returned. It's fine, don't worry about it. He walked over to Jiraiya, already knowing that the snake escaped. The looks on their faces said everything. He threw the book at Jiraiya, who caught it. Tell me everything you know about Danzo Shimura. They made their way back to the village, Tsunade agreeing to go with them. Doflamingo had learned quite a bit about the village elder. He was apparently Hiruzen's rival and always wanted the seat of the Hokage. There was a clear difference between the two rivals though. One believed that the leaf would prosper through care and love, the connections with others guiding it through all hardships. Danzo believed that only military strength and domination would gain the leaf peace, doing everything necessary to prove its dominance. Honestly, Doffy couldn't care less about their rivalry, he wanted to know Danzo's weaknesses. The man was apparently crippled but was a powerful wind-style user and was very adept at training shinobi. He once had an entire division to himself, only for it to be disbanded when the organization's methods were found inhumane. Danzo was a ruthless man, who surrounded himself with powerful shinobi to make up for his own lack of strength. They went back to village as soon as they could, Jiraiya sending a messenger bird ahead to tell them they would be arriving today. The council had gathered in the Hokage Tower, waiting for Tsunade's arrival. They approached the gates, Kabuto strung up and being carried by Jiraiya, a seal in place to lock away his chakra. They walked in, greeting the guards and preparing to separate. All right Naruto, Tsunade and Shizune are going to head to the Hokage Tower to speak with the council. I'm going to take Kabuto here to tea and try and get some info out of him. Tsunade will meet up with you at your apartment when she's done to heal that girl Temari. Doffy nodded at him, not answering. They began to walk away, Doffy heading to his apartment until they were out of sight. Naruto. He turned around, looking through the gate and up at the big bad fox. You know, you really should find a new way to greet me. Saying my name in such an ominous voice is starting to get old. Hey hey. The fox simply stared at him, ignoring the jab. What are you going to do, Naruto? I can sense the hate you feel toward this man, Danzo. This village will not react well if you just kill him. Doffy chuckled at the fox. You silly fox, I'm not going to kill the man. You're right, as much I don't like it I can't just kill him, I'll be labeled a traitor of the leaf for it. But. He turned around, a large grin on his face. That doesn't mean I can't stop by and say hello. Shikaku sighed as he sat down at the meeting, waiting for Tsunade to appear. Things in the village had been a mess recently. Constant bickering on what should be done about this or that. Some wanted the Jonin to stay in the village to defend them, but others wanted to send them out on missions, gathering revenue to rebuild. He thought choosing the next Hokage had been a pain, but this was worse. He looked around, eyeing the various council members. The council of the village consisted of the major clan heads, the 3 elders of the village and various important civilian figures such as nobles or merchants. When the Hokage had been decided, it was only with the daimyo of the Land of Fire, various clan heads and Danzo, one of the elders. There were other prominent figures who had invited themselves like Jiraiya, but that was mostly it. The civilians had been making a ruckus so far, but that wasn't surprising. It was always a concern for them on who the next Hokage would be. The village was a dictatorship, meaning the villagers had no say in most matters. This makes them very paranoid about who is going to be deciding their laws and helping them live in peace. Hearing that a shinobi that hasn't been in the village for over a decade, so she could go drink and gamble was about to be their Hokage. That was about the worst news they could hear. Currently, the nobles and merchants were arguing their case, saying that they should have a say in who became Hokage as well to avoid turmoil forming with the regular villagers. It wasn't a bad idea, but it was a bad idea. He didn't blame them, it was just that they didn't see the world as Ninja did. They couldn't understand why Tsunade had to be Hokage. His thoughts and the meeting were interrupted, when the shinobi in the room felt something speeding toward them. They tensed, the anbu falling from the ceiling to prepare for the threat. It burst through the window, the force shaking the building and making the lights flicker. A figure was standing on the table, and the anbu drew their blades, ready for battle. A pressure appeared, a large amount of chakra being released. He saw the civilians slump across the table, the pressure of the chakra and sudden interruption being too much for them. He and the rest of the clan heads just waited. They all knew that this person would be attacking already if he was a threat. The lights came back on, revealing a blonde boy with a large grin on his face. Naruto turned slowly, looking at them as he chuckled. Hey, now, tell me. He walked on the table, stopping when he approached the 3 village elders. Which one of you is Danzo? Kabuto grunted as he was thrown onto the cold stone floor of his new cell. The cell door slammed shut, locking a moment later. He struggled to get up for a moment, not used to missing a leg. His hands were still tied up and his chakra sealed. He looked around, seeing a bed and a small toilet in the room. He sighed, scooting over to the wall, using it to stand himself up. He did so, quickly hopping over to the bed and laying down. He looked down, eyeing the stump that was now his leg. He hadn't expected to lose the limb, nor did he expect the Rasengan to turn into whatever Naruto had created. Now he knew why Orochimaru was so interested in the boy. He was strong. Still, he felt like he and Orochimaru didn't put up enough of a fight, but he supposed that his master didn't want to push his luck. This plan of theirs was a rather risky, and overselling it could be disastrous. In that way, he supposed he was thankful for the lost limb. It did wonders selling their act. The wound was rather serious, meaning they would have to wait for him to heal, otherwise he would die during the interrogation. He knew they needed him alive. He sat back, a small smile on his face. Orochimaru really did think ahead, didn't he? He lifted one of his tied-up hands, using his teeth to tear off a fake skin graft, revealing a small seal on the back of his hand. Now, all he had to do next was wait for the signal. Which one of you is Danzo? He looked at the three elders, but he already knew which one he was looking for. There was utter calmness and composure on his face, not even fazed by his arrival. His haki ran over the old man, sensing his strength. He used to be a powerful shinobi, but age had gotten to him, not even mention that he was now a cripple. Why an old man like this thought he could be Hokage, he would never, what the hell? He continued to analyze Danzo, making sure his face never changed as he did. There was something wrong with this guy, more specifically his arm. It was like it wasn't even there. No, that's not it. It was like the arm wasn't his. There was more, even the eye behind those bandages had that exact same feeling. Just what had this Danzo been up? One of the elders spoke up, the other older man. What is the meaning of this? He glanced over at the council member, chuckling. He was about to reply when the door slammed open, Tsunade and Shizune stepping inside. Naruto, what do you think you're doing? Tsunade screamed. He was laughing now, placing his hands in his pockets. Hey, me. I'm just here to say hello to a respectable member of the council. He looked over at Danzo, leaning in close to look him in his only visible eye. I'm a huge fan of yours. Hey. Doffy jumped off the table, walking over to Tsunade. Now that I'm done with that, you can continue your little play date. Send the bill for the window to Jiraiya. He walked past her, entering the hallway and making his way out of the Hokage Tower. While he would have loved to continue having his fun, he wanted to get back to everyone else. He headed home, thinking about what to do about Danzo. He was a powerful man if only politically. Still, he obviously had connections, and could make an obstacle for him later down the line. He would give the Leaf the chance to take care of him properly, but if he continued to be an issue, Doffy would take care of it himself. While he wanted him dead for killing the old man, he had bigger things to worry about right now than simply revenge. That fight with Kisame and Itachi had been rather eye-opening. He wasn't too upset that he wasn't strong enough to fight them on an even playing field, there was only so strong a 12-year-old body could get after all. Even so, Doffy had found that he was running out of tricks to use. His strings were not the same ones he had in his previous life. They weren't as durable, not as powerful, and were made of chakra. Still, that meant something else, that unlike his devil fruit strings, he could improve them, make them stronger than they were before. But he needed more than that, he needed to focus on the skills his new life offered him, ninjutsu. Already, with just the Rasengan he was able to create another powerful technique. He needed more things like that, and Virgo would as well. They can't rely on pure strength alone, his fight with Shukaku had taught him that. Usually this wasn't something that he had to worry about. His haki would make it so his attacks were always able to his opponents, but what if he were to run into something like Shukaku again, something whose physical form was immune to physical attacks? He wasn't sure what he could do. He needed more training, more techniques. He arrived at his apartment, opening the door and walking inside. He felt that everyone was here, sitting in the kitchen. He walked in, seeing him at the dining room table. Virgo, Temari, Gaara and Sakura were sitting down, playing cards. He looked up slightly, chuckling at the small eye of sand looking at Sakura's cards. They turned toward him as he walked in, Temari and Sakura greeting him. Naruto. He smiled slightly, giving a light wave. He sat at the table as well, using his strings as a makeshift chair. Hello everyone, I'm back. Temari spoke up first, putting her cards down. So, how did everything go? Were you able to find Tsunade? He grinned, nodding at her. Sure did. She's at a meeting with the council now, but she'll be coming here as soon as she's done. They nodded, Virgo getting up from his seat. As expected of you, Naruto. Now, I shall make some food to celebrate your return. He nodded at him in thanks, watching as the rest of them returned to the game. He listened as they talked to them, telling him about what they had been doing while he was away. Virgo had done well, making sure they all were acquainted with each other, eating and training together. Sakura and Temari seemed to become good friends, something that made him glad. The girl needed a female friend, someone to replace that Ino girl. Gaara was unsurprisingly quiet, but he could see that he was simply enjoying the moment, something that he understood very well. Virgo finished making food, all of them relaxing and eating together. He looked around, remembering the last time his family had gotten to eat together. The members of the family may have been different, but it felt as nice as always. He watched as Sakura berated Virgo for eating so sloppily, trying to wipe his now messy face off with a napkin every few minutes. Temari was busy fretting over Gaara, asking if he wanted more food or something else to eat, with Gaara shaking his head every time, smiling lightly. Sakura and Temari would talk as well, gossiping about something or other, but Doffy wasn't very interested in gossip of all things. He brought his chopsticks up, about to eat a slice of beef that Virgo had made. Yeah, not to mention those two boys that were hitting on us the other day. The chopsticks stopped, slowly being put back on the plate. He looked up, turning toward Temari. Temari, you wouldn't happen to know where those two would be right now, would you? She gave him a questioning look, tilting her head slightly. Well, they said they would be in the forest of Training Ground 14 for a couple days. Why, is something wrong? He grinned, getting up slowly and making his way to the door. No, nothing's wrong, I just have a quick errand to run. He walked to the door, waving behind him as Temari told him to not be gone for too long. He walked out, making his way to Training Ground 14, eager to protect his family once again. They had come back. The village was apparently raving, celebrating the return of Tsunade Senju thanks to the efforts of Jiraiya and Naruto. He didn't care about that, all that mattered was that Naruto was back. Sasuke had to speak to Naruto, he couldn't just let go of that fight he had witnessed. Sasuke had been completely outclassed by his brother. As soon as he felt Itachi's hand on his wrist, he knew that he had lost that fight. His Sharingan had been active in that moment, burning it into his memory. Itachi batted away his Chidori like it was a joke, a simple toy. Naruto had jumped in and saved him. Naruto took on Itachi and the strange blue man all by himself. Naruto looked at him, told him to run, as if he were in the way. He scoffed at the thought, walking through the village and searching for Naruto. Of course he was in the way, he could never do any of the things that Naruto had done in that fight. The attacks Naruto performed, the blows that he was able to block, not even his Sharingan let him do those things, he had tried. Sasuke tried to make Naruto's strings, but the amount of chakra that the blonde put into them was incredible, and Sasuke just couldn't do it. He tried that other attack, Naruto's storm leg. No matter how many times he kicked his leg forward, he just didn't have the strength required to perform it. How? Just how was Naruto and Lee so powerful? Whatever it was, whatever secret method the two were using to improve, he needed to know. He would drag it out of the blonde, no matter what it took. He needed that strength, that power of theirs. He had seen it with his own eyes, Itachi going down on his knees, with Naruto standing in the air before him. It was something he had thought about in only his twisted fantasies. Yet there it was, played out before him in stark reality. Sasuke knew that Itachi wasn't invincible, and now he knew that Naruto's power was the key for defeating him. So, here he was, searching endlessly for the blonde. Honestly, he didn't even know what he was going to say to him. He had no plan, no real goal or conversation in mind. He just wanted to know, had to know how to get as strong as he was. He was looking for almost an hour when he found him, in a random training ground no less. He was standing in front of two older boys, some genin by the look of their headbands. One was on his back, slowly crawling away as Naruto held up the other by his face. Sasuke watched the interaction from one of the branches of a tree. Hey hey hey. So, do we have an understanding? Sasuke could hear the boy's muffled screams, trying to nod his head while clawing at Naruto's hand. Good. Then get out of here. He dropped the boy, who immediately began to sprint away, his friend joining him. Naruto laughed as they ran away, turning towards Sasuke and looking upwards at him. Hey there, Sasuke. Need something? Sasuke jumped down, looking at Naruto, his heart beginning to quicken. Naruto, I need to ask you something. Naruto raised his eyebrow, the grin falling from his face as he did so. It seemed that Naruto was taking this seriously, he didn't know if that was a good or bad thing. I need you to tell me how you got so strong. I need you to teach me, Naruto. He's silent for a moment, looking at him. It seemed like an eternity, one that Sasuke loathed. He didn't like this, asking for someone help, especially Naruto's. He had always seen the blonde as a rival, a goal to meet, the next level to attain to get closer to killing his brother. He never expected it to turn out like this. Uchiha was supposed to be proud, powerful and unyielding. So, what did that make him, practically begging for Naruto's strength? He couldn't help but feel like he was disappointing his family, but they had to understand, this had to be done. Naruto finally broke the silence, Sasuke eager to hear his words. No. Sasuke's eyes widened, shock appearing on his face as Naruto began to walk away. That couldn't be right, he had to have heard him wrong. He knew that Sakura had asked the same of him, and he knew that Naruto didn't refuse her. So why wouldn't he do the same for him? Didn't he understand how much he needed that strength, how important it was for him? He walked closer to him, snarling as he grabbed Naruto and spun him around. The hell do you mean, no? Tell me why. Naruto just looked at him, his taller height making him look down. He never noticed it before, but Naruto had grown, now almost 4 inches taller than him, where it was only a couple when they had first graduated. I don't have to explain my reasoning to you, Sasuke. He hesitated at that, Naruto's tone and frown intimidating him slightly. He forged on anyways. Don't give me that crap. If you could train Sakura, then there should be no reason why you couldn't train me as well. So, what is then? His breathing was heavy, staring up at Naruto and waiting for his answer. Why do you want me to train you, Sasuke? Sasuke's eyes narrowed at his teammate, getting frustrated. You know why. I have to kill Itachi, I have to make him pay for everything he did to me. I need to revenge the Uchiha clan, no matter what it takes. That's why I won't take no for an answer. Naruto looked at him, his frown deepening. He sighed, turning back around. That's exactly why, Sasuke. If I trained you, made you stronger, you would just rush onto Itachi, throwing everything away. I won't let you do that. He stood there for a moment, trying to take in Naruto's words. He felt anger well up, as he yelled at Naruto's back. And what the hell would you know about it? You don't know what it's like. You were always alone, with nothing to lose. I lost everything. You don't know what it's like to lose your family. Naruto didn't stop, simply walking further along. Sasuke was seething, unable to take the excuse Naruto had given him. The further Naruto walked away, the more Sasuke wanted to follow. He needed him now, he knew that much. Naruto was someone who could help him achieve everything he wanted, so what did Naruto want from him? His shoulders sagged, looking up and staring at the sky through the leaves of the trees, trying to think of a solution. He barely heard Naruto's voice on the wind. I know more than you think, Sasuke. He returned to his apartment, meeting back up with everyone else. Tsunade had stopped by finally, looking over Temari and coming up with a cure for her. She said it would take a few days to figure out completely, but she would have it done by then. It was quite the relief for everyone. Tsunade had more news, of course. Apparently, he had been made a chunin, not that he really cared too much, the only good thing was no more D-rank missions. Shikamaru had been the only other leaf ninja to make chunin though Sasuke, Neji and Sakura had been close to the promotion. He refused the jacket, of course, not seeing the point in wearing it. Eventually, Tsunade left for the night, Sakura along with her, leaving just the 4 of them there. Lee, I want to talk to you in your room for a second. They all looked at him, Virgo nodding as they left. They walked into his apartment, an almost exact copy of his own. They sat on the table, Doffy not really sure how to start. He decided to be blunt. I found a fish man, Virgo. Virgo didn't react, looking as composed as ever. Eventually he simply nodded at him. I see. So, what are you thinking then? He looked at his friend, deep in thought. He folded his hands above the table, placing his forehead against them. They're still out there, Virgo. This isn't some different or other world, just another damn island in that same miserable world. Are we continuing then? He looked at his friend, surprised but not at the same time. Virgo had done his duty, died for Doffy's dream, and yet, here he was, ready to go again. The question ate at him, uncertainty in his mind. The rage he felt for the celestial dragons had not waned. He couldn't help but fantasize about tearing down those world nobles, and making them pay for everything they had done to him, to his mother. Still, I don't know, Virgo. Every time I think about it, I can't help but think of Temari, Sakura or Gaara. I can't help but think of hearing their final words over a transponder snail. He had lost everything in his quest for vengeance, losing everyone he had for his own selfish gain, and he wasn't sure he could ask them to do it again. They were just kids, they needed someone better, someone who could truly guide them. Someone like him, who would throw it all away for just a chance at vengeance. They deserved better than that. That was why he refused Sasuke. He had witnessed that road firsthand, and he couldn't let Sasuke go through it as well. Dofy was old, technically in his 50s now. In some ways, he was a bitter old man with a grudge, and he couldn't let Sasuke become like him. He wanted the Uchiha to be better, to find a different answer than throwing his life away. The boy had nothing, no one to help him and could barely ask for any help in the first place. Sasuke asked him to train him, not to help him. He intended to fight that battle alone, and anything in his way. It was a path of destruction that he saw from a mile away, he had seen it before after all. Still, what was the point if he just threw it all away again? What was the point of helping all of them, building his family just to repeat history? His mind told him that he should just live in ignorance, forget the celestial dragons and move on in this new life. His heart showed him the image of a dead woman, a father shot in the back of the head, and a pair of brothers who had betrayed one another. He looked up at Virgo, his friend waiting for his next words. We'll forget about it, for now. Virgo nodded to him, Dofy getting up and returning to his apartment. He placed a grin on his face, walking back in. He looked over to Gaara, ready to have the next conversation for today. Gaara, when are you planning to return to the hidden sand? Gaara looked at him, surprised at the subject being brought up so suddenly. I still have to talk to the Hokage, but I plan to leave in a couple days. Dofy went over to the side of him, an arm wrapping around his shoulder. Alrighty then, you make sure to send us letters, alright. Gaara nodded to him. Good. Now I have to get going for a little bit, so I won't be back till later tonight. Temari, you can stay here for now, but we'll try and find a place for you tomorrow. She nodded as he walked to the window, opening it and waving at them. He jumped through, heading a few rooftops away where the toad sage was standing, leaning on a railing. He walked up to him, sitting on the railing beside him with his arms crossed. He looked at Jiraiya. We need to talk, Jiraiya. The old man looked over at him, his face serious. I figured you would want to ask your questions. Dofy looked at him, trying to see what he was thinking. The Akatsuki, who are they and what do they want? Jiraiya was silent for a moment, before he began his explanation. The Akatsuki are a group of S-rank missing ninja, that have gathered together for some mysterious goal. We don't know what they're planning, but whatever it is, they need the 9 tails for it, and the other tailed beasts as well. Dofy raised an eyebrow at him, while Jiraiya continued. These ninja are dangerous, Naruto. You've seen what just 2 of them can do, and that was them holding back, making sure they kept you alive. If you're gonna protect the ones in that apartment of yours, you need to grow stronger, because they won't hold back against them. His eyes narrowed, fists clenching at the very thought. So, what do you suggest then? Jiraiya looked at him with determined eyes. I have info that the Akatsuki are going into hiding for a few years, gathering supplies and funds for whatever they're planning. During that time, I want to take you with me on a training trip. I'm going to teach you as much as I can as well as how to use the 9 tails chakra. He was surprised at the last part. The fox has chakra as well. Jiraiya nodded to him. Yes, I'm guessing you haven't used it yet then, which is all the better. That just means that when you finally can control it, you'll be even stronger. That was interesting. He never considered the fox possessing chakra before, nor how powerful it could be. He would have to talk to the fox tonight about it, he was going to anyways. Honestly, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Shukaku was able to use a technique after all, so it made sense that the 9 tails would have chakra and be able to do the same. When are you planning for this trip? In a couple weeks. It will last for about 3 years. He dipped his head in thought. He wasn't comfortable with the idea, leaving everyone behind for 3 years, it was asking a lot. Why are we leaving the village in the first place? Jiraiya looked at him. We need to keep you on the move, Naruto. We have no idea when or if the Akatsuki will try and capture you again. While my informant is reliable, that doesn't mean we shouldn't play it safe. And you think it would be that easy to avoid them? It would be much better if we stayed in the Leaf, with more ninja to help drive them off and being able to protect everyone here as well. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes. And you think that's safe? What if all the Akatsuki invades the village, Naruto? What then? Then we would have a much better chance in the Leaf than by ourselves. Jiraiya looked at him for a moment, before sighing. This is about them, isn't it? He said, gesturing toward his apartment building. So what if it is? The two stared at each other, in a deadlock. Jiraiya gave in first. Fine, we'll take them with us then. As much as I don't like it, it's better than you staying here until you can hold your own. Doffy looked at him, absorbing his words before nodding, satisfied. Jiraiya was a powerful shinobi, clearly, and would be able to help each of them. Now he just had to tell everyone the big news. All right then, I have to go out of town, but I'll be back in about a week, and we'll leave soon after. He nodded, watching as the old man disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Doffy sighed, checking another conversation off the list. He sat down on the roof cross-legged, entering the fox's cage. There was a conversation to be had between the two of them, and it was put off for long enough. The constant distractions of training and missing ninja were gone now. He walked toward the cage, looking up at the pair of red eyes looking down at him through the gate. He waved at them. Yo. The fox leaned down toward him. Naruto. He put his hands in his pockets, kicking slightly at the water at his feet. I know you were listening, so tell me what you think. We got some S-rank ninja coming for us, and we have to do something about it. The fox looked at him for a moment. You mean my chakra, right? He nodded, continuing their conversation. If you're as strong as everyone says, and these Akatsuki are as powerful as Jiraiya thinks, then we're gonna need every advantage we can get. The fox was silent, pondering what to say at his words. Naruto, these Akatsuki aren't just after me. They are after the others as well. What will you do about them? He raised an eyebrow, not expecting the question. He eyed the fox, curious at what he was getting at. He understood. You're worried about them, huh? Hey hey hey. I never expected a guy like you to be so worried about his friends. The fox began to growl at him. Be quiet, Naruto. I do not care about their well-being, but it is important that they aren't taken as well. The more of my siblings they gather, the more powerful they will become. Doffy chuckled, not believing his reasoning for a second. Whatever you big son dear, I get you. You want to protect your family, right? That's something I can get behind. So, you lend me a hand, and I'll help you save your siblings, deal? The fox let out a large sigh, the water rippling and rushing at the force. I'm afraid it is not that simple, Naruto. And what do you mean by that? The fox visibly pondered his next words, an explanation forming in his mind. Some of us tailed beasts have eventually grown an ability or power unique to ourselves. Shukaku was able to control sand, and I was given the ability to sense the negative emotions of others. There is hate within you, Naruto. Doffy's brows furrowed, frowning at his words. Why is this important? The fox continued. My chakra acts as a catalyst, bringing forth the negative emotions in the ones who wield it. If I were to give you my chakra, there is no doubt in my mind that you would go berserk. I cannot allow that to happen. Naruto, before I can give you my chakra, you must rid the hatred in your heart. I refuse to lend it to you until then. Doffy stared up at him, frustrated. He knew that the fox was telling the truth, there would be no reason to lie. The fox wanted to help him, to save the other tailed beasts, but he couldn't. Just another thing to blame the celestial dragons for. He sighed, not liking the answer, but accepting it anyways. Alright then, I guess I'll have to do this the hard way. Don't worry, I'll train hard, and get strong enough to protect both our families. He turned around, thinking about the fox's words. Let go of his hate. That was almost impossible. He couldn't imagine it, forgiving or forgetting everything that had happened. He wanted this to stop, this hate constantly interfering in his new life, creating hesitation and now creating an obstacle for him. He wanted to overcome it, but he didn't even know where to start. He began to walk toward the darkness of the tunnel leading to the gate, waving back at the fox. See you later, fox. Kurama. He stopped, turning around to look at the fox. My name, fool, is Kurama. He grinned, walking backward into the darkness. See you later, Kurama. Hey hey hey. Kabuto sat in his cell, his home for the last few days. He waited as he heard his approach, the clack of the cane he was very familiar with. Sure enough, the elder of the Leaf Village had come to grace him with his presence. He greeted him. Well, hello there, Danzo, what a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect to see any visitors today. The man looked angry, but then again, he almost always looked angry. There were two ninja at his side, the ninja guarding his cell stepping aside to let them speak. He must be another one of Danzo's men. Kabuto, this is a very dangerous game you're playing. I don't know if I should play along or simply kill you. Kabuto chuckled at him, knowing that the threat was just empty words. Come now, you wouldn't kill me. After all, Orochimaru is relying on me to help grab his latest vessel, relying on you. If we fail, I'm sure he would be a lot less willing to give you your latest arm. Now wouldn't that be a shame? Danzo grunted at him, gesturing over to the guard of his cell. They unlocked the cell door, one of Danzo's ninja coming in. They undid the seal locking away his chakra, and placed a scroll in front of him. Danzo addressed him afterward. There is all the things Orochimaru wanted to give you. I expect to see my payment soon, Kabuto. He chuckled, stretching as he released his hands with a chakra scalpel, stretching for the first time in days. I'll be sure to let Orochimaru know. Danzo began to walk away, his ninja following as the guard locked the cell again. He grinned, placing the scroll in his shirt to take out when the time was right. Gaara had left yesterday, so Doffy saw fit to gather everyone together and spend some time with his new family. They had gone out to eat, walked around the village, and now they were on a training ground, Sakura wanting to get some training done. She decided to train with Virgo while he trained with Temari. Well, I suppose you can use a leaf to train as well. You know, I didn't expect you to be a wind user. Especially since you use fire. Any reason you decided to learn fire first? He chuckled at her, holding the leaf in between his hands. Hey hey hey. Just felt like it. She rolled her eyes at him, smiling. Well anyways, the thing to remember about wind is that it's like a blade. It's sharp and used to cut through things. So, imagine that in your mind as you create wind chakra. He nodded, closing his eyes and concentrating as his chakra moved toward the leaf. They had stayed like that for a few hours. Temari teaching him to use wind chakra as Sakura and Virgo sparred. Sakura lost every time of course, but she seemed to be having a good time. She was different now, she used to hate training in the academy, but now she almost looked forward to it, couldn't wait to get stronger than she was. He opened his palms again, seeing the leaf split halfway down the middle. Wind chakra seemed to be much easier for him, Jiraiya's advice to start with wind coming back to him. He already had a few plans for wind chakra, using it to make his strings sharper and maybe enhance his storm leg attack. He looked over to Virgo, wondering what affinity he had as well. The abilities the people in this land had were quite incredible. Never did he think someone could control the elements like this without a devil fruit, and that wasn't even considering what else they could. Walking on water, creating illusions and clones. Most of that was all common among ninja. He couldn't even imagine what people like the Akatsuki would reveal to be capable of. Orochimaru had shown the ability raise the dead themselves, and he was just one S-rank ninja. He looked down at the split leaf, then back toward Temari and Sakura. They needed to be stronger, they couldn't handle the Akatsuki. He thought about what he could do, what he and Virgo could teach them. There was always the 6 powers. It was a powerful set of skills that provided nothing but benefits. There was Haki as well, but that was a bit different. Everyone in this land had never heard of Haki before, something that was very strange for a land full of nothing but warriors. It was possible that they were unable to use Haki, or it was just very difficult for them to. Even then, it may not be worth trying to teach them. Haki was difficult to learn, requiring a mix of talent and willpower. Some could learn Haki very quickly and become masters at it, others had to train for years just to use it. Would it even be worth trying to teach them? It was more than possible that they would be better off training up the skills they had now. Haki was powerful, but it wasn't their only option. He would have to wait until the time came. For now, he had to tell them about their little training trip. All right everyone, come here for a second. He called out to them. Virgo stopped, still holding Sakura in the air by her leg. He set her down, both of them walking over to him and waiting for what he had to say. In about a week, all of us are going to be going with Jiraiya on a training trip together. Sakura and Temari looked at him with surprise, Sakura asking the first question. For how long, Naruto? He grinned at her, waving his nad at her. Just a couple years or 3, not too long. What? He chuckled at their reaction, Sakura freaking out the most. But wait, I still need to get my parents' permission first. I've never been away from the village for that long. He looked at her. It'll be fine Sakura, Jiraiya will be with us and so will we. It'll be perfectly safe. Besides, this'll be chance to see the world, and I doubt your parents would stop you from doing that. She nodded hesitantly, clearly nervous about the conversation. He grinned. All right then, let's all head home then, it's getting late. They all agreed, heading back to their homes, Sakura having to separate from the rest of them. Temari had gotten her own apartment as well, from a different complex than their own though. Theirs was already full. She would become a leaf ninja officially tomorrow as well, having finally finished all the paperwork. She was a bit peeved that she would still be a genin. Doffy entered his apartment, closing the door behind him. There had been a lot happening the last few days and needed some time to rest and think. He already had plans for multiple techniques to train and create on their trip. His main concern was Danzo. He would be out of the village for almost 3 years, and Danzo would not be simply staying idle. The man was crafty, and he would have to prepare for him. His best chance at defeating Danzo was to either expose him to the leaf, or get above him in rank, meaning become Hokage. Both would not be easy, but whatever happened, he would be ready for it. He made food, staying up for a bit as night fell. He went to bed later, falling asleep and hoping to avoid nightmares. He was awoken later by an explosion. Sasuke ducked underneath the kick, sweeping his leg along the ground to try and trip his opponent. Kakashi hopped over it, reaching down and grabbing him by his shirt. He threw him behind him, Sasuke throwing several kunai at the Jonin. Kakashi plucked one from the air and deflected the rest, waiting there as Sasuke landed, panting. They had been at it for a couple hours now, and it seemed it was time to rest. Sasuke fell backward, landing on his backside and supporting himself with his arms. Kakashi walked forward, stopping in front of him. You've been pretty aggressive these last couple days. Something on your mind? Sasuke looked up at his sensei, thoughtful. I asked Naruto to train me. Kakashi looked at him with a veiled amused expression. Oh, am I not good enough for you, Sasuke? He scoffed at the man. Kakashi was a powerful shinobi, but he was an ordinary one as well, not like Naruto. Naruto was unordinary, using strange techniques and skills to beat his opponents. Sasuke needed those skills, and Kakashi wouldn't be able to teach that to him. That's not what meant. Naruto said no, said that he wouldn't let me throw everything away. Kakashi was silent for a moment, before speaking. He's right, you know. Sasuke glared at the man. Don't try and tell me that. What if I killed everyone you ever loved, huh? Would you still be able to say that? I'm afraid that's not possible, Sasuke. You see, Kakashi tilted his head, a smile on his face, everyone I love is already dead. Sasuke stared at the man, shocked at his words. I've been around for a long time, Sasuke. I've been a ninja for 20 years, and I've seen many men do what you're doing now. Trust me, it never ends well. Take Naruto's advice, and move on, Sasuke. He didn't answer the Jonin, looking toward the ground and thinking about his words. He heard Kakashi take a deep breath. Well, I guess I better get going. I'll see you tomorrow, Sasuke. Bye now. He puffed away with a wave, leaving Sasuke alone. He got up, making his way home. He walked into the Uchiha compound, the only sound being the gravel and dirt crunching under his sandals. He looked around, eyeing the empty buildings. They were beginning to become worn, the wood rotting and falling apart. Without anyone living in them or the proper maintenance, the entire place was falling apart. He made it to his own house, walking inside and taking his sandals off. He walked through the hallway and into the kitchen, grabbing some rice balls he had made that morning. He walked toward his room while he ate, looking at the first door to his left. It was the living room, closed off ever since that day. He walked in, standing at the center of the room. He looked down, a dark stain still burned into the floor. The blood of his parents. They wanted him to forget this. To just go and live on like nothing had happened. No, he couldn't do that, he refused to. He didn't know what Naruto wanted, but he would convince the blonde to give him his strength, no matter what it took. He was an Uchiha, and Uchiha didn't give up so easily. He walked out of the room, heading back to lay in his bed and rest. It was nighttime now, and Sasuke could use the sleep. He wouldn't get the chance. He ducked suddenly, dodging the small barrage of kunai coming through the front door, which was now open. Someone burst in, rushing toward him and trying to tackle him. He jumped off the ground, going above the very large man. He felt someone grab from behind. A second one. He snapped his head backward, hearing a crack as he broke his captor's nose, freeing himself. He landed back on the ground, jumping upward to dodge a punch by the large man behind him. He kicked backward, landing a hit in the large one's face. There was an explosion of wood, a third enemy bursting through the wall nearby and landing a solid punch on Sasuke's stomach. He slammed into the wall on the opposite side, the wood cracking and creaking at the blow. He quickly got up, looking around as the three figures surrounded him. He looked at the Varro's headbands they were wearing, sound ninja. Honestly, can't you idiots do anything right? He turned toward the door, seeing a redhead walk in, her headband around her head like bandana. Alright, now listen here, Orochimaru was kind enough to send you a little offer. You come with us to the hidden sound and let Orochimaru analyze you and your Sharingan. In return, he'll train your bitch ass to something actually worthwhile. He looked at her, shocked at the offer. The others had stopped as well, waiting for his answer. And if I refuse? There was another voice, someone else entering behind the new girl. He had stark white hair and pale skin, his face emotionless. It would not be wise to refuse the sound 5, Sasuke. You will either come willingly, or we can drag you back with us. An oppressive aura saturated the air, filled with a disgusting but powerful chakra. He looked around, seeing marks begin to appear on the other four figures. They all looked very strange, one with multiple arms, one with two heads, but the other guy was just very large. He looked at the white-haired one, most likely the leader. He thought about the offer, to be trained by one of the Sannin. It lined up directly with his goal. Through Orochimaru he could gain the power necessary to kill Itachi. After all, Orochimaru was the one who killed the third Hokage, the supposed god of shinobi. He still remembered the fear and awe he felt in the forest, the seemingly invincible figure that Orochimaru held. Still, he remembered something else. Naruto had fought Orochimaru, and he had come back alive, not a scratch on him. He realized it with shocking clarity. There was a choice to make here. He could either go with Orochimaru, abandon everything and everyone and gain the power he needed to kill Itachi. Or, he could stay in the leaf, trying to gain Naruto's powers to kill Itachi once and for all. It was a difficult choice. If I trained you, made you stronger, you would just rush onto Itachi, throwing everything away. I won't let you do that. He gritted his teeth at the memory, looking at the leader of the Sound 5. Take Naruto's advice, and move on, Sasuke. Why was everyone telling him that? Why couldn't they see it his way for once? Foolish little brother, if you wish to kill me, then hate me, detest me, curse me, and survive in an unsightly way. Run, run and cling to your pitiful life. Then, when you possess eyes like mine, come and face me. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. He faced the Sound 5 and made his decision. The seal began to burn, his mission had begun. Kabuto took out the scroll, rolling it out in front of him and releasing the contents with a small puff of smoke. A stack of high-powered explosive notes, a map of the T&I building, and a brand new leg made from the first Hokage's cells. He grabbed the leg first, attaching it to his stump. He felt a rush as the leg connected to his body, feeling the first Hokage's power flowing through him. This was dangerous. It was more than possible that the first Hokage's cells would overpower his own, but it was something that he had to risk. The Sound 5 were grabbing Sasuke and taking him back to the hidden sound, and it was his job to create the distraction that would cover their tracks. If they were worried about a small invasion of saboteurs, they would hesitate to send Jonin and Chunin to chase after them. He got up, testing and stretching his new limb. It felt odd, almost numb, but it would work. He walked over to the cell, the guard opening it for him. The guard nodded as he turned around, Kabuto quickly killing him by snapping his neck. It had to be believed that he escaped on his own. Danzo didn't want thoughts of him letting Kabuto escape. He moved quickly, going through and escaping the T&I building using the marked map on his person. Danzo had conveniently marked the best way of escape for him, and he didn't hesitate to use it. In less than a minute, he was out, burning the map when he was done. He went across the village, planting explosive notes on various buildings such as the Academy and Hokage Tower. He placed some on some apartment complexes but avoided Naruto's, not wanted him to sense his presence. He was almost done, only having one more tag left, and he knew where to use it. He went toward the house, picking the door lock and walking inside. He placed the note on the floor in the center of the house. Naruto had angered him quite greatly by taking his leg from him. He would take something from Naruto as well. He couldn't help but chuckle lightly, going to meet up with the Sound 5 and leaving Sakura's house. When he reached the village walls, he made a hand sign, explosions ringing throughout the night. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.